need a microphone, but I do need, anyway, everybody's way over there and I'm over here. It's just weird.
Do you want to move that?
No,
We can move our chairs.
you're fine. You're fine.
We want to hear you. My mom wants to hear you.
Can you hear okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Scott Cotten. I did the swim on Monday night and Tuesday as a fundraiser for Silver Camp Swim Program and water safety here at Silver Bay. This swim is something that's been on my mind for over 40 years. I swam the lake sometime around when I was 16 years old, across the lake a mile, and just kind of fell in love with crossing a body of water and having that amount of time to swim continuously, not having to hit a wall and turn. To me, pools are a great place to train in the wintertime, but they're not a great place for me to swim and just be in my head. And to me, swimming for me is very meditative, and it's where I go to relax. It's where I go to solve problems. I can swim for hours, and my mind will wander through personal stuff, work stuff, future stuff, past stuff. Just wherever my mind tends to go, I just sort of let it go there. So probably 2011, I got back into swimming just as a fitness thing. And I was in my 40s and not feeling great about my fitness levels. I got back into the pool and started swimming again. And at that point, I got in and I swam 50 yards and I had to stop and catch my breath. And I knew from the past that a month, if I keep this up for a month, if I come 3 days a week for a month, I'll get my cardio back and I'll be able to just get in and swim. And I did, and I gradually got that back. And then got in, we had at the gym I went to, they had a master's swim class. And which was just like grown-up swim practice from high school or college. And I started doing that. Kate and I started doing it together. And my wife, Kate, right here in the front row. And found an open water swim that was a 2-mile swim that was somewhere near our house, and we went and did that. And that was my first long open water swim. And I completed it, and I didn't feel fantastic about it, but I did it. And one thing I learned is I didn't like swimming with a lot of people, because in events like that, you just have a lot of people swimming in the same course, and I got swam over. So I watch like triathlon swim starts now, and I look at those, and it just terrifies me because I don't have anything to do with that many people trying to start swimming at the same time. So open water swimming really became my favorite thing to do. And then during the pandemic, Kate and I moved into a new house in March 15th of 2020, and then all the pools closed. Kate was an aquatic physical therapist, did all of her work in a pool, and her pools were closed, and she was out of a job. And so we went several months where gyms were closed, the pools were closed, and I was not feeling great. And I found a group of people about 45 minutes away from my house that swim in the lake. And I got connected up with them and went out and swam with them and just found my people, found my place, found my calling. And so 3 mornings a week, when the weather was adequate, I would get up and drive out there, get there at 6 in the morning, and we'd swim for an hour and a half, and then I'd go to work. And
Where do you live? What part
I
of the
live
country?
in Hendersonville, North Carolina area.
So it's warm.
Yeah. Well, we swim from April through November. Now the water gets into the 50s at the beginning and the end of that, so it's cold. But so during that first year in 2020, this thing called the Lake George Marathon Swim, virtual Lake George Marathon Swim, popped up on Facebook. And I thought, well, that sounds cool. I love Lake George. I've always wanted to swim Lake George. And I'd already been swimming open water. And I thought, I'm going to sign up for that. And when it started, another person I swim with and we started just working on it and every day. And sort of a competition between she and I. Would swim in the morning. I'd swim for 1.5 miles or 2 miles and have to go to work. She'd stay and swim another 2 miles after I left. So then I'd have to go at lunch and swim 2 miles in a pool to get caught up. So anyway, we ended up doing that in 7 days. And I was like, oh, I've never done that before. So at the end of that, I had this fitness level that I never had before, and I didn't want to let it go. So I just continued swimming. And then the following year, again, the virtual Lake George swim. I signed up for it again and did it in 4 days. In 2022, I did it in 2 days. And then this year I was going to try to do it in a single day, but weather didn't cooperate. And, I didn't have enough people to be there with me till midnight, and so I stopped it at 21 miles. But that was kind of my preparation for this attempt on the lake. It was like, I could do 21 miles in a day. We started at midnight, swam through the night, and really I was trying to prove out all of my theories of swimming, because nutrition is a huge part of marathon swimming. You've got to have nutrition about every half hour. You're burning 500 calories an hour, and you can take in about 250 to 300 calories an hour, and then your body can process that much. So you're always in a calorie deficit, but if you don't feed, and that's one thing I learned the second year when I tried to do the marathon, the Lake George Marathon swim, and I did it in 4 days. I was trying to do it in 3 days, but one day I just completely bonked, and I'd never experienced that before. And it was just swimming along, felt great, and all of a sudden I was so exhausted and so tired, and I realized, okay, this is a nutrition problem. So over the years, I've just kind of tweaked and learned what I can eat. Some of the more traditional feed items that swimmers use are just these carbohydrate drinks. And what I found last year when I did a 10-mile swim in Tennessee was that after about 3 hours, I couldn't stomach the thought of another taste of that orange stuff. So I kind of explored and found my own unique feed that I make from actually nuts and honey and hot chocolate, and add electrolytes to it. So I kind of get everything all in one.
Is it all liquid then?
It's all liquid. Yeah. This is my feed bottle. So every half hour they would fill this up and had a rope tied to it with a glow stick. So at night, I've got some pictures I'll show, but they just toss this out to me in front of me, and it kind of it's like Deadliest Catch, where they're trying to snag the crab pots. You just throw the bottle to the swimmer and swim right up to it. And literally the idea is just open it up. Kate and I found this at Walmart. I was trying to find something that was easy to open, and this was just the easiest thing I could open, because when your fingers are all waterlogged, they don't work the same way. So something that's really hard to open was not going to work. And generally, it's just down as much of it as you can, close the lid, throw it back, keep swimming. That was the.
So you're treading water while you're.
Yes, because in a marathon swim, we're allowed a swim cap, a bathing suit, and goggles. That's the extent of it, and those are your tools right there.
What about earplugs? You allowed earplugs?
You're allowed.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, you're allowed to plug. And nose
And
plug.
nose plug.
Yeah.
Was I allowed nose plugs?
Mhm.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
But no watch.
No watch, no nothing
So
that
I'm not
nothing
gonna
that could
be
give
very
you a pace.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So
got,
like goggles, yeah.
I got dispensation for this because it doesn't feature the pace clogs. I just wanted it to be able to hit a button at the beginning.
Yeah, good.
And,
Did you do a marathon swim?
Bridget did the lake in 2017,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
And that's really, Bridget Simpson, who lives in Ticonderoga, was one of my inspirations, because I was actually up here by myself when Bridget was doing her swim, and Kate told me about it. I was talking to Kate from who she was working, and I was up here just for a few days, and said, "There's a lady going to swim the lake." So I immediately got on Facebook and found her and reached out to her and tried
And
to.
see, that's the kind of person we need, because the crew is the most critical thing.
Were you the crew for her then?
I tried to be, but
Yeah.
I had to leave.
I had bad weather.
I had to leave Wednesday morning, and she didn't start till
Tuesday
Tuesday
night.
night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So didn't work out, but I did go to one of her crew meetings, and we did a little test night swim out in Hague off the Waltonians, and so it was just a real inspiration to see. And then a year ago, there was a woman named Shannon Keegan who was going to attempt a double length of Lake George.
Double? Oh, dear
There's a
God.
there's a woman who has done a double, named Carolyn Block, who also was 20
That was recent, 2020.
20
Yep.
something,
How long did that take?
56 hours.
And she's alive.
Yeah.
She's very young, too.
There are some, marathon swimming is really dominated by females.
Yes.
Interesting.
And it's a body composition thing.
Is it?
They float better.
Hey now.
It's just a thing. And really, women are very well suited for endurance. So there's probably 80% women in the higher level of marathon swimming,
I
probably.
think that may be fair.
Yeah.
And the thing to hold out hope for is that many of us are older. You know, many women are getting into the 50s and 60s.
How old were you when you did it?
I was getting ready to turn 50.
So
How long did it take?
So a few pictures. This was at the beginning. We started at Lake George Village. I have a bunch of pictures, but they're all out of order, so I'm just going to have to pick through them and show you.
What
This-
is it that you put on?
That is Desitin.
Okay.
Desitin is mostly zinc oxide, so it's a really good sunscreen.
Is it for chafing or is it for like?
It was more for sunscreen
Okay.
than anything. I used this petroleum jelly in my underarms, which are what chafes for me. But that was just something that's going to go on you and it's going to stay on.
Uh-huh.
I probably still have some on it. I mean, it does not like to come off. It's a sort of wear and rub off kind of deal.
But he had a lot more come off than we expected.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so this was getting in the water. On the back of my goggles are some lights. I've got a green one on one side and a blue one on the other. Because we were starting at 7 o'clock at night, or in the evening, we were going to swim through the dark.
It's almost like a word, sorry.
So here we are heading out from the dock at Lake George Village. My son Ryan kayaked with me throughout the night. So he kayaked from 7 to probably 6 a.m.
I have to tell you, Scott, we came up from Cotten County on Wednesday. We were coming up for this weekend. And when I saw your range of 14th and 17th to start, and I'm like, please wait, please wait, please wait. I just wanted to just witness that so bad.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
that's before the start. That's Ryan getting ready. My son's actually a very accomplished sea kayaker, so he was the perfect one to do this. He's got a really nice long kayak that's one of these boats that likes to go straight, which is perfect for this. This is a bunch of crew. Bob Singer is the gentleman in the blue shirt. He's a local guy in the Glens Falls area who calls himself a swim advocate or a swim enabler. He doesn't do as much swimming anymore. But it was just a beautiful night down there. The steamboats were coming and going. The woman on the boat. Here is a woman named Janine Sherrill, who I met back in May, really for the first time, and asked her if she'd be willing to help with this, and she agreed. She was the team leader. She's shepherded about 4 or 5 different people up and down Lake George, so she knows what she's doing. She knows what swimmers need. She can be a bit of a drill sergeant, but she taught me a lot on this swim about. Says this is your day. This is your day to be completely selfish. You tell us what you need, and we will do everything in our power to provide it. It's not my nature to be demanding, but I was told that I had to be demanding. So try. The boat that we use is a dive boat out of Glens Falls. They've done, I think maybe this was their 5th swim on Lake George Village. They did Carolyn Block's double. So they started in Lake George, swam to Ticonderoga, turned around, swam back. And that swim, Carolyn ended up with some really, really rough weather. She was swimming downwind, but she had 6-foot waves at the end of her swim. Got a lot of duplicate pictures of the same thing.
The woman that was with you on the boat there, was she enough of an official capacity to verify everything was done for
Yes.
documentation purposes?
You don't need an official person. I've got a sheet here that you feel free to just take a look at. In a marathon swim, you document every half hour.
Oh, okay.
The time, the stroke rate, the water temperature, air temperature, wind direction, and then just any notes about what did the swimmer eat, what did the swimmer say, what did the,
Get me out of the water.
It's really interesting for me to go back and read through this because one of the things that happens to me when I'm swimming is it's a time warp.
So did that help you remember some stuff that maybe you didn't
Yeah,
notice on a walk?
absolutely.
So it's like a diary that you go
Because
back and
I
read.
would sometime probably around 11 o'clock, I asked her what time it was, and she says, She says, I don't know, it doesn't matter, just keep swimming. So I turned to my son, like, Ryan, what time is it? It's 11 o'clock. I'm like, thank you. It's like, I just want to know.
Yeah.
I just need to get a reference point.
Yeah.
So about every half hour I was asked, or every hour and a half I was asking him what time it was because I would just lose track. I was like, oh, how many feet was that since 11 o'clock? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of wished for a digital clock on the side of the boat. That would have, I would have really liked that.
And that's legal.
Yeah. But you know, we got the wind direction. The wind picked up to 7 miles an hour about 10 o'clock, and it blew pretty good. It never stopped. It slowed down a little bit until about 3 o'clock, and then it was 8 miles an hour. And you know, Lake George is long. It doesn't take a lot of wind to make a lot of waves.
I'll tell you something, we're down in the village. I took a swim this afternoon. I don't know how you did it. I'm out there for 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, I can't even stroke. I'm just going to tread water for 20 minutes, and I did.
Great.
I had no idea. Like,
You know, also around 3 o'clock it started raining. But you know, I absolutely felt strong, and you know, part of the mental part of this to me was my determination was I was not going to stop unless there was a physical or weather reason that I had to stop. I really didn't think shoulder pain was going to be a physical reason. I didn't think there was going to be a physical reason. If I have a heart attack, I'm going to stop, you know, or something. But just I think just battling into the wind for so long that just took more out of me than I don't know. But who knows? I could have gone another. If the winds had been perfect, I might have gotten as far as Hague and gone, my shoulders hurt. I
That must have been hard to make that decision to stop. Yeah.
Well, not at that point. It wasn't because I'd been looking at Sabbath Day Point for 3 hours, and it didn't seem like it was getting any closer because there's a long stretch of open water between like the Eye of the Needle and
Yeah.
Sabbath Day Point, and I've been looking at Sabbath Day Point forever. And at that point, I didn't have the kayaker in the water, and I was having to sight. And another part of swimming is open water swimming is navigating. You know, in a pool, you just look at the black line, you get to the end of the wall.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because for somebody who swims in a pool, and I can follow the lovely black line, and it's so
Right.
easy. And the first time I got in open water, I freaked because I sort of panicked. I mean, where was I? Was I headed where I thought I was?
Right.
How do you navigate when you're in open water like that?
By sighting, by just picking your head up just a little bit and looking. The idea is, you know, good body position in the water is to have your head down.
Right.
You know, the water's hitting you at the top of your head. So for me, I breathe 3 times on one side and 3 times on the other. That's become my natural pattern. So on the time where I have 3 strokes to get to the other side, I'll just pick my head up just enough. They call it alligator eyes, just enough to get your eyes out of the water. And you just sort of get a real quick sight picture in your head. And you're looking for a landmark or a mountaintop or
Okay.
you know, a light or something that you're just swimming toward. Yeah, hopefully something that doesn't move.
I
Are
tried
you
to
often
swim across our little
Are
lake.
you often, like, all of a sudden going that way, or?
I used to be more so, and that's a part of getting a balanced stroke. I've spent the last 8 months really working on technique. I got a virtual coach and went through a virtual training session of really learning how to swim again. I did this with a friend back, it started in November. In the very first session were some exercises on the ground, you know, out of the water, and then the very first instruction was to get in the pool, hang on to the side, put your face in the water, and blow bubbles. I mean, it was really
Basic.
back to zero. The whole first week was on breathing, breathing correctly, trying to get a diaphragmatic breath. It's very hard in swimming for me to do that. And then after that, it was all about stroke technique to try to preserve your joints. Her whole stroke technique is about minimal effort and preserving, because a typical swim stroke, the recovery is just you bring your arm around like this. And that's just a lot of movement. You see a lot of people doing this.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
And her technique is, you know, as you pull your arm back, you just pull your elbow up and move your clavicle forward. So instead of using your shoulder, it's all clavicle. And the other part of that is if you're doing that right, you've got this really big bone that's moving forward. And when it comes to a stop, you've got momentum working for you. So one of the things we did in the pool in just learning that was just moving your arm forward, moving your other arm forward, and you'll move on down the pool. You're not even stroking, but you just have all that momentum that's going forward, and then keeping a body position to where your feet ride high is also just a really important thing. So I've struggled with turning left when I swim, but that's just part of trying to get my stroke balanced. And with this virtual class, it's really just I would make some video and send it to her, and she had an app where she could mark it up and slow it down and speed it up and go forward and backwards and say, look right here, see what you're doing? I see that. So it was just a lot of things to think about. So I spend a lot of time when I'm swimming thinking about my technique, trying to perfect it, trying to be conscious of what I'm doing. And near the end of this swim, I was sighting, for Saturday Point, and trying to see over the waves. And the higher you pick your head up, the more your feet sink.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just another challenge at the end. I'm like, gotta get my feet up, because you don't go anywhere when you're like this. So it's just something else that happens when you're tired, and the waves and the sighting didn't help. Let's go through just a few more pictures. And any questions, just shout them out. I'm happy to answer. We can get past
Can you talk more about why you chose to do this swim and what the cause was that you were hoping to promote?
Sure. My reason for doing it was really it was a personal goal, personal challenge, something I've been thinking about off and on for 40 years. Really been talking about it with people for 10 or 12 years probably, and I kind of got to the point, having done these virtual Lake George swims and gaining a lot more experience in open water swimming. My thought process was, well, what am I waiting for? I'm not getting any younger, so let's get on with it. And really, I've always wanted to do some sort of fundraiser for Silver Bay, and this because I have such a connection with Silver Bay. Just a quick little bit of my Silver Bay story is my grandparents honeymooned here in 1936. My grandfather was a YMCA professional. My dad was a Y professional his whole career. My family's, for 4 generations, has been coming to Silver Bay. To me, you get the Tets in the front row. Cindy and her sister Barbara and family were in the cottage next to us every year for years on end. And you have your Silver Bay friends, and this place just becomes, for those of us that come here a lot, it just becomes part of who we are. I would not be who I am without Silver Bay. I worked here in 1986 as an imp. I met my wife, Kate, on the very first day at orientation. We played People Bingo as a mixer to get to know each other, and we were the only 2 people in the whole place that could swim butterfly. That was one of the bingo cards. Was, find somebody who can swim butterfly. We found each other, and then we never left. So I've always, the waterfront of Silver Bay, from the time I was 12, I spent all of my time on the lake. I took Bill Baker's Make Sure course. I became a safe boat operator at 12 years old. We had a little outboard that we put on a Silver Bay rowboat, and whether I was here by myself or with my cousin or with a friend, we explored the entire lake in a Silver Bay rowboat with a 6 horsepower outboard. And we thought we were Magellan. I mean, it was so much fun to have an adventure as a kid. I remember being down in the Black Mountain area and talking to some people, and they're like, "You came from where? In that?" I was like, "Yeah." So when I started to consider this swim really seriously, it was about a little over a year ago, and I reached out to Silver Bay and said, "Look, I'd like to, somehow tie this in with a fundraiser for something to do with the waterfront." And I really left it to Silver Bay to decide what that was. I knew it needed to be something. I wanted it to be something that helped other people with an appreciation for the water. So tying it into Silver Camp and water safety, especially for kids who don't have access to water. I've heard, and Bridget, you can confirm this or deny this, but kids in Silver Bay, or not Silver Bay so much, but Hague and Thai, don't have a lot of access to the water. There's a lot of private homes on the water and not a lot of public access. and there's no pools around, so you're very limited in the season where kids can learn to swim. So the fact that Silver Bay has a program that does teach swimming and water safety to local kids, it's just something that if I can affect one person's joy of the water, if one person can go through life with joy of the water like I have, then I've been successful. And when I finished swimming on Wednesday, and we came back to the dock at Silver Bay, I was walking up behind the boathouse, and I got roped in to go talk to a bunch of falcons and ravens and chippies who were at the top of the boathouse, who wanted to hear all about the swim. So it was, I could barely talk. I was very hoarse at that point, and more than a little tired, but it was fun to talk to them. And I got approached by two different kids, one who gave me a handmade card that thanked me for doing this and said she was a competitive swimmer. She was probably 12. And another little girl who gave me a little beaded salamander thing. So I want you to have this. And I was like, that's cool. It was fun to be able to tie it in with a cause. Not just me. I mean, to me, it was a big deal. What I wanted from this swim, I got. I wanted a physical and mental challenge. And I got that. And I would have, I'll just walk through some pictures. This is Janine getting ready to throw me my feet. She's flinging the rope there. But we had some beautiful weather. It was raining for hours. That's the end. That's when I got out, and they put me in the Barney towel. That's one of the night shots. The blue light is me. Behind the buoy is a tow buoy. When I swim by myself or swim in lakes, the lake I train in has no boats, only kayaks and stuff, so no power boats. But we've got these swim buoys. It's a dry bag on the inside, so you can put a towel or a phone in there or whatnot, but they just fold up and inflate. And at night we put a little light in there.
I have a solar light from All World.
Yeah, so you put this around your waist, and this just floats between your legs, and it creates visibility so people can see you. And when we swim at night, because it's 6 o'clock in the morning, this time of year and earlier in the year, it's dark for a good half hour. So I've had a lot of night swimming experience at Lake Junaluska. It's a 2-mile circumference around this lake. It's not a great big place. It's very safe. But I got very comfortable swimming at night, and I learned that I really, really like swimming at night. It's so peaceful. And I did a swim in July. I wanted to do a swim because I was originally planning to start the swim at 9 o'clock at night. And ultimately, I was talked into starting it earlier, which turned out to be a really good idea to start in the daylight and let everybody kind of settle into their kayaking and their jobs on the boat with a little daylight, and the swimmer too, for that matter. So we ended up starting at 7. But so I did a swim one night where I started at 9, and I was intending to swim until about 6 in the morning. And I was completely by myself at Lake Junaluska, swimming the circumference of the lake, never more than about 50 feet from shore. Most of the time in water I could probably stand in. So I was very confident and comfortable doing that. And I made it to 2:30, and I realized that I was bored and lonely.
Yeah.
Because you're out there by yourself, and it's like, there is nobody. This lake has a running, walking trail around it. So most every time there's people around, and you see people, but I'd stop in the middle of the lake and just look around. It's like, there is not a soul out here. So I ended up stopping, which was fine. I got 5.5 hours of swimming in, 8.5 miles. It was a good enough thing. I wanted to see how I was going to feel starting at the end of the day that I didn't have any sleep. That was really my goal, because like if you start anything in the evening, you get up in the morning, maybe you take a nap in the afternoon, but now I'm starting something at 7 or 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and I'm going to go on for 24 hours. How's that going to make me feel?
What medical stuff do you have on the boat? Like, do you have to have certain stuff?
This particular boat being a dive boat, there were 4 professional crew on this boat. They chose to stay on the boat the whole time, and they would switch off every 4 hours. So there'd be a captain and a first mate, lookout, and every 4 hours they would switch off between 4 crew. They were all New York State captains. They're also certified dive instructors and first aid instructors. They had oxygen on the boat. So all things which were very comforting to know were there. I certainly didn't expect to need any of it, but it's good to know it's there. They did a great job. That was one of the things. There's a lot of ways to do a swim like this. You can do it with your own boat. You can do it with a rented boat. You can do it with a charter boat like this. My goal with this swim was to try to stack the deck as many ways as I could in my favor, so that the fact that all I had to do was pay the people and they did everything. I didn't have to worry about bringing my own boat or having my own captain or putting people out. It's bad enough crew. We had Ann, Kate's cousin was one of my crew on the night shift. So I just you can't do this sport without help. Marathon swimming seems like a solo sport, but you can't do it alone. I had 4 people other than the professional crew on the boat the whole time.
Yes. Towards the end, you didn't have a kayaker?
The kayaker was only at night.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he.
Do you feel if you had, if you were to have a kayaker, is there then a different point of reference for you because they're then navigating, then it's only looking at the boat 20 feet away?
It might have helped me a little bit at the end, but he offered to get back in, and I said no. So I also had people on both shifts who offered to be a companion swimmer with me. You're allowed to have somebody get in with you and swim for an hour.
Okay.
And I think that they can swim for an hour at a time, but it has to be 2 hours in between, or there's some rule about that. And sometimes that can be helpful to help you reestablish a pace. If your stroke count has gotten slow, somebody can get in and swim with you, and you're like, all right, I got to keep up with them, so that gets me back up to where I need to be. The gentleman who was there at night offered to swim with me, but at that point it was so dark. I just thought having somebody else to try to keep up with is just going to make it worse. So I chose not to. And then during the daytime, Jane offered to swim with me again, and it was just like, no, I don't think it's going to help me. I just need to keep my head down and keep swimming. So let's see if I can find some more interesting stuff. This was at the end. This is where we went after the swim. Which is another experience. We went in, we ordered our pizza, and I went out and took this picture, came back in, and all the power was off. It was like, but I'm sure you all experienced that too on Wednesday night. This was Wednesday morning at shift change. Carolyn Cross came out and brought my next shift, and Kate as well. At night, that's what it looked like at night. You've got the kayak with the buoy. I had that buoy floating behind the kayak, and then I'm the blue light in that picture. But it was really dark.
Really dark.
Here's a good example of me swimming up to a feed. Janine has thrown the bottle out. She had a coach's whistle, really loud whistle, so she'd blow that 3 or 4 times and I could hear her. I wondered how many people we woke up on the campsites in the middle of the night. Did you hear that whistle? So there I am, treading water and taking my feed, and I got the most horrible looks on my face. Because typically I've got a mouthful of something I'm trying to swallow.
What island is that?
One of the ones near Sagamore Island.
Since you started at night, what did you do that day?
Yeah, that's what I
What
was
did you do
asking.
the day, did you take a nap?
I did. I slept as long as I could in the morning.
Did you stay with people, go by yourself? What did you
No, we're in Laurel Cottage, so I was with Kate and with Ryan. We all just kind of took it easy. I took a nap late morning after I got up, and then I got up and I started working, putting my feeds together, getting everything organized, and took another nap in the afternoon, and then about 5 o'clock we headed down to Lake George Village. Let's see if I can find there's a couple of videos.
How was the traffic on the lake? No, because we started at night to avoid
Right.
the congestion of boats at the south.
It was
end.
not bad. There was not a Monday night.
Yeah.
It's kind of later in the season. It was really pretty quiet. The steamboats were beautiful. It was a beautiful
That's fun.
sunset. Here we are back at the beginning again. So I told you these pictures are from 4 or 5 different people's phones.
Did you have to watch what you ate that day?
That day, I was very careful with what I ate. I ate things that were not likely to have a lot of residual.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I wanted to be fairly cleaned out before this event started. Because so there was the sunset with the Minnehaha in the background.
Yes.
So I mean, I was seeing that every time I breathed. It was like, oh my gosh, this is just gorgeous. That's some of the crew on the boat. More of the same pictures.
It was a dark night though.
There was no moon. The moon did not rise until 4:30 in the morning, and then it was a crescent moon. My original plan for this swim was the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of August. But my team leader could not participate at that time, so I moved it to this week. So 1st, 2nd, and 3rd was a full moon, and it was a gigantic, I don't know what they called it, super moon. So that would have been a whole different experience. We had a little gathering on Sunday with the crew just to get everybody acquainted with each other and kind of make a plan. That previous picture, that was earlier in the day on Monday. And I was like, look, that's beautiful. There's hardly any wind. It's a clear sky. Well, it didn't stick. So back at the beginning, I've got some videos here. That's the tracker. I did have a GPS tracker that you could watch while I was swimming so people could follow along. And that's where I turned it off. So this is a little bit of the kind of conditions we were in. You're really kind of diving through waves. So there's one of these where I kind of come out the side of a wave and half my body's out of the water. Like right there. It was an experience. And you can see the rain in the water, which the rain bothered me none. Rain was great. And then some more night pictures. Sorry, these weren't in order, but.
So just to be clear, you were in the water for 2 nights?
I was in the water for 17 and a half hours. I started at 7 o'clock at night and I finished it. I got out at 11:30 in the morning. So. I don't know that I have anything else new here, but
Would you do it again?
yes.
Oh, yeah. That was your plan for
Well, that was.
Is there a plan in action?
That's my feed mix right there. I use Second Nature nut mix. I found this nut mix while backpacking as just something that I could eat during the course of the day. And it just really worked really well for me. And I thought, I wish I could use something like that for swimming. So I just experimented and ground it up and added some hot chocolate to it for some extra sugar and some honey and some water and some electrolyte additive. And it really did everything I needed it to do.
You did that every half hour,
Every half hour, yeah. I also used a commercially available meal replacement that I found that comes in a bag. It's called Rec Pack. And this is apparently something that like special forces guys use.
There you
You
go.
just add water to it, and it's a 700-calorie meal. And they fed me one of these during the course of the night. The other thing we did with the feeds, because my feeds were concentrated, so like a half a cup of my feed to a cup of water. So they would add, all my feeds were hot. So in an effort to try to preserve body heat, you could tell me what was the temperature you were shooting for, 125, 130?
We were aiming for your preference. Forget what you told us.
I think it was like 125 or something.
Yeah.
So just something that wasn't cold. Even if it was 100 degrees or 98 degrees, you're not adding anything to your body that's going to try to cool you down anymore. That was my biggest fear of this swim was the
Yeah.
cold.
Because the water's pretty cold.
I mean, it's not.
It actually was 75. It was very, I was never cold on this swim. I expected to be cold. That's another thing that I practiced during that June 25th, that virtual Lake George swim that I tried to do in a day. We started at midnight, the water temperature was 72, and the air temperature got down to about 51 that night. So from probably 1:30 in the morning for 6 hours, I was cold. And that was another experience I needed to add. Everything I've done has been just another experience I've never had that now I have. So now I can put all these things together. It's like learning anything. You just keep stacking new experiences on top of new experiences. So that time of swimming cold and having to mentally just sort of set it aside. It wasn't a debilitating cold. It was just an uncomfortable cold. But it's like, okay, put your mind somewhere else. Focus on something other than being cold.
I think the hot feeds are brilliant. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly, that's
Yeah, that was really
brilliant.
Janine's.
Yeah.
Janine brought that to the table because there was another woman who swam the lake last year, Charlotte Bryn, who's from
Yes.
Stovermont,
Yeah.
who did it in a record time.
Yes.
And is the oldest person to have done it at this
How old?
point.
How
She
old?
was 54.
Yeah.
I was going for being the oldest person, but didn't make it.
Our day will come.
But she said that with Charlotte that they did hot feeds because that was
Yeah.
her biggest fear too, was the cold.
Yeah.
She happens to be a very fast swimmer. She
Oh,
did
she's
it in
the
7.
record.
She swam the whole lake from the time it took me to do 19 miles.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a powerhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tall, lean, just beautiful stroke. The person who's been swimming for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But this is a sport that's it's just a challenge, a personal challenge. It's not a team sport. I've never been a team sports person.
You need to write a book.
No, God, you think Kate just glad the swim's over.
Oh, hell no.
Yes, in all honesty, this swim took a lot out. This swim took a lot. I was either swimming, working, or sleeping, and if I wasn't doing one of those three, I was thinking about swimming. And Kate was very patient with me, and it was a challenge. But I wanted to give it everything I had, and I did. And I don't regret a thing about the swim. I wish the wind had been behind me. And the first time the wind picked up, I stopped for my feet, and Janine says, "Anything we can do for you?" I said, "You can dial down the wind." She says, "You picked the day, you picked the direction." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." Or something along
I have
those
a
lines.
question about that. On Facebook, and I do not believe everything on Facebook is correct. Somebody had mentioned that the wind is normally south to north.
Yes.
70% of the time. At that
Yeah.
time, on one of the things.
This particular
Is that
day,
normal?
It's predominantly from the south.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I was like, oh, because I don't know why I thought it was the opposite. And so to read that, I'm like, I wonder if that's actually true.
It is.
Until our time, most swims had gone south. Diane Strubal's first swim
Right,
went
that-
south, and
that's-
she kind of
that's why
set
I
the
would-
precedent.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I mean,
Yeah.
I just knew that I didn't want to get out of the lake and get in a car
Right.
and drive home.
Right,
Be
that's-
there,
yeah.
you know? So
And for me,
Yeah.
my reason, I really, I would have started in the north if I had to, but
Yeah.
that really wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to get, to me, I'm a northern Lake George guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm a
That's your
Go
home.
home.
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
Glen
Yeah,
Island
exactly.
north, Bolton north.
Yeah.
Northwest Bay I love. Anything south of Bolton, I just don't care to go down there.
Yeah.
So the idea of getting that part done in the dark sounded really appealing to me.
And also, there's the most boat traffic there.
Exactly.
Right, so
Yes.
yes, getting that done in the dark was good. And I really wanted to be in the daylight in the part of the lake where I would know exactly where I am.
Yeah.
True.
Because I know the lake very well, and so one of the hard parts about that is that you look at Saturday Point for 3 hours and you don't seem to get any closer, or whatever, Anthony's Nose, or whatever, coming through the Narrows. Once we got through the Narrows and we were kind of in the Mother Bunch area, I could see the silhouette of Black Mountain on my right. And I saw the silhouette of Black Mountain for 6 hours because it's there, and then it gradually is there, and then it's there, and it's, you never don't see it.
Yeah, it took me forever. It took me until like after my swim to realize that, you're swimming past an island or a feature, and it's the hub of the wheel, but you're on the tire.
Yeah.
So you see it coming and going, so it just seems like it's never going to not be
Yeah.
there.
The narrows were very interesting in the dark. Just there's a whole lot of blinking lights going on.
Yeah.
And that was disorienting. There were times where I felt like we were swimming east,
Mhm.
west, but we weren't. We were swimming the right direction. I was swimming the right direction. I say we, because it did not feel like, I feel like it was more than me swimming. It really felt that way because of the whole crew was there. And I just, it was an experience.
So proud of you. Amazing.
Yeah, it was
I'll
fun.
root for you next time.
Would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
In a
wow.
heartbeat.
Are
I want
you-
the oldest title back.
Are you gonna, do you have plans to do it again?
I'm recovering from tendonitis, so I'm just starting to swim like a human again. But I've had a couple of good swims recently, and I need to build miles again. But see, Lake George is compelling, and maybe you feel the same way, Scott.
I do.
That's where I want to do some of my most significant swimming. And I swim year-round in Lake George. When
That's
I'm
crazy.
up now, until you try it. You too could go down that path. But, somebody said after I swam, well, now you can do the channel. I'm like, no, I have no interest in, if you're gonna do something like this, it's compelling. It's something that is calling to you, and that lake calls to me.
Yeah.
And I think it calls to you too. And
Absolutely.
We've swum in the Thai area.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
Do you have a different, is that similar to how you feel?
very much so. Yeah, I don't.
So like,
there's nothing else I
another
want.
channel,
There's
like a
nothing
channel
else.
swim or something, so the same thing, it's.
Don't care.
I mean, I have other
There's
swims.
couples, swim around
Right.
Key West
Of
sounds
course,
like,
yeah.
I'd like to see your
Swim
lake,
swim along Key West sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I could imagine swimming from Catalina to the California coast. That sounds like a fun swim. Just
I'd
because
rather do 8 bridges.
people talk about swimming with the dolphins.
Yeah.
That's very common that the dolphins just come along and swim with you because they're curious creatures and they want to see what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's some elements of that are appealing, but really it's a love affair with the lake.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
great.
I got in the water. One of the things Janine told me, she said, look, you need to stop swimming the week before this. And for a swimmer to not swim, you just it's like an alcoholic without a drink. You're just like, I gotta get to the water. So I swam. My last long swim was Sunday before we came up here.
Yeah.
I went out and swam a mile on Wednesday just to feel the water. And then when we got here, we swam Ryan kayaked, and I swam from out around Odell and back, which was about 2 miles. And that was really just, I got in the water and I just sort of, honestly, I introduced myself to the lake. It's like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I really feel like I'm not doing this alone.
Have you
It's a
been
partnership
back in?
with the lake. It's not people like, you going to conquer the lake? I'm like, I'm not trying to conquer the lake. I'm trying to, we're going to do this together.
Yeah.
This is a team effort, So,
Yeah. But you've been in the lake again,
I have.
and you felt good again.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And it felt, I honestly, there was a point on these notes in the middle of the night where I think it was sometime between 3:30 and 4, where I just got in a zone where I don't even know what happened to that half hour. I don't remember it. I remember hearing the whistle and coming over to get my feed and kind of coming out of a dream-like state. And somebody asked me, how are you feeling? And I said, it's beautiful. And it really was. It was
Yeah.
just, at that point, the wind was picking up and the waves were picking up, but I was just
Like a trance or like just in your,
I was in my zone.
That's it?
And I was happy.
Wow.
And, 3 o'clock in the morning is about the first time I ever thought about, this wind is really not much fun. I can just stop right now.
Well, and
Then-
again, if you had had that same minute in another swim, if you hadn't had the goal of swimming the lake, that minute of being in the waves could have felt completely different.
You could have.
You know,
Yeah, if it
because-
hadn't been a swim that I cared about.
Right.
But yeah, and you know, my mind was, I was not, you know, there was only two things that were going to get me out. It was lightning or a debilitating physical problem. And in the times where I first started contemplating not finishing, it was about 3 in the morning. And I said, well, did a little inventory, like nothing hurts, the weather's good, you can't stop, because you promised yourself you weren't going to stop. I took some leave at 7 in the morning. That's when my left shoulder started to hurt a little bit, and then by 10 o'clock, both of them were hurting. And at that point, I'm doing math in my head. At the pace I was going into the wind was I was making about a mile an hour. I had 13 miles to go, and I'd been swimming for 16 hours at that point. I was like, this is not going well. And then so I continued on for a couple more feeds, because that's really the first time I mentioned. That's another interesting thing in these notes. At 7:05, I took my feed and it says, in quotes, I don't know if I can continue to swim against this headwind. And Janine said, look, swim to the next feed. It's a half hour. And that's one of the things that really helps in marathon swimming is you just swim to the next, you just have just a little bunch of half-hour swims. And then you stop and you tread water and you get some nutrition. And you go, okay.
Was that the first time you vocalized it at that time?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know when it was, like about 3, you were thinking.
3, I was thinking about it. I vocalized it because that was the worst of it right there.
That's amazing right there, though, that 4
Yeah.
hours.
7 o'clock
Shouldn't
was
have
when the waves were just, it was white caps, you know, it was just,
Yeah.
you know, I was like, this is pretty rough.
I give you a lot of credit for getting out of the water.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really do, because if, you know, some people that are blinded by whether it be success or, you know, ego or whatever it is, would do damage to yourself and
Right.
to I give you more credit for stopping when you knew you can't,
Right.
knowing we're going to live another day
Well,
tomorrow.
I have hurt my shoulder before and it had
Yeah,
taken
you
months
don't
to
want that.
recover, and I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah,
I was
I'm
like,
saying,
no,
it's
if I
like-
stop, I mean, my muscles are sore, but my
I
joints
mean,
don't.
this was successful. I don't care if it was 1932 or 2. To
Yeah.
me, I consider it success. I mean, you're like, ex my husband. I like to watch you guys on the thing. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could be like that. You know, and I mean, like, you don't realize that what you're able to accomplish. People like me just dream of doing, and maybe someday I will. But I'm just saying, you are
Yes.
right there for the people that. You're up there for people like me
And
to
I'm-
watch and
I'm
say,
just an
someday I
example
hope to be
of
like that. If I
you.
don't get there, that's fine.
Yeah,
But if I do, that's even better. But just the way you even present yourselves, I'm not going to injure myself. I'm going to take you didn't join the virtual this year because you know she was hurt. So it's like
right.
making all the right decisions
Yes.
for a newbie to say, don't be a ass and go out there and try to prove yourself.
It
get
helps to
hurt.
be, you know, 56 years old where you're like, you know, if I was 26, I might have just, you know.
Well, yeah.
At this age, it's like, I know what the recovery would be like. If I really hurt myself, I'm gonna ache till November.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't wanna do that, so.
You were still, excuse me, you were still able to raise funds for the program, weren't you? You didn't have to complete the swim.
No, it was not predicated on,
Yeah.
it was an attempt, and, you know, I told Walt when I talked to him in the very beginning, I was like, I wouldn't attempt this if I didn't think I could do it.
Sure.
But there's just things outside your control. There's probably, I don't know how many people attempt like George that don't do it, but it's probably more than completed.
It's hard to say because so few have actually tried. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think
Really?
is kind of, it's a bummer in a way. I mean, I was the 11th person to do it. In the course of, you know, a long time,
Thank you.
58 to I swam to 17. So that's a long stretch to not have too many people. And yeah, there were a few attempts, but I'm not sure how many. Because, you know, what constitutes an attempt. But, you know, think back to Rocky. I went the distance. You know, you went the distance. You went the distance. You pick your distance. I mean, I did the lake as a grudge match because I got tossed out of the Hague 10K the year before because I'm slow. And I'm like, I didn't make the cutoff for the 4th lap. And I'm like, I could, okay, I may be slow, but I can swim a long time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to swim that way. And I didn't know how to pool to swim in the winter. It's like,
Yeah.
but you can, if you want to do this,
Yeah, no, it's
get training.
That's what I'm
You
saying.
know,
It's like
seriously.
This is,
Yeah, I
And
mean,
if you want to,
it is
see
it's
what
something
your
that
distance is.
you're making it so that it's something that anyone can.
Yes.
Literally
The whole
anyone can
feature
do it.
of the YMCA too. It's
Yeah.
you're out there with programs and the kids and teaching them.
Anything's possible. Any
Yeah.
given day, anything's possible.
For me, that's a big part of what this was.
Yeah,
Just,
huge.
The last 3 years, I've just continued to challenge myself to do things I've never done before.
Yeah, and
And-
I think having people try it, and I'm gonna harp on it a little bit, but making the attempt, seeing what your distance is for that day, in whatever the conditions are that are dealt to you, that's huge, and I'd like to see more of that. And I caught grief prepping for my swim because people are like, well, you know, you're too slow, you're not gonna stay warm, you're not gonna be able to make it. I had people not even be willing to give me a list of kayakers to work from because they just made this foregone conclusion as coaches. I'm a coach. You don't pull that. Somebody comes to me and says, I want to do this. I'm going to say, okay, let's see what the options are and see how to make it
Right.
happen.
You have a question,
And
Karen?
you go your distance.
My comment is more as you're
Along
benefiting the program.
Yeah.
And I just want to comment a bit because I do know a single mother whose 3 kids come to camp.
Mhm.
And I don't think they ever would have learned to swim.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And how important it is. And I made in my working life, I had a single mother whose son I knew would never learn to swim. And when he was about 3 or 4, I said, okay, now I'm paying for lessons.
Mhm.
And she says, I can't swim. Why do I? And then she told me, of course, I didn't let her quit.
Yeah, good. Exactly.
I was really pretty pushy.
Yeah.
She was pretty belligerent against me. And she talks now about how every summer her son just can't wait and they have to get to a pool. And she has to find a way for them to have a place that they can swim.
That's great.
And I guess what I'm saying is, I did it one-on-one. I did one little black boy is a safe swimmer.
Right.
Yeah. It's
And I don't
life-changing.
know how
Yeah.
life-changing
Yeah.
for that. And the mother
100%.
was not, had it nowhere.
Yeah, there are, that's
Unimportant,
becoming
and I just think-
the swimmer community has started to really recognize this. So in I live in North Carolina, but in South Carolina, there's a swim in Charleston called the Low Country Splash. And all of the funds from the swim, it's a 2.4-mile swim, all the funds go toward teaching underprivileged kids to swim.
There aren't pools now.
Yeah.
There's no place for them to go. The lessons cost a lot of money. But
Yeah.
I guess this has been one of my personal pushes,
Yeah.
Good for you.
is to make sure that, and I don't want to say, but little black kids can swim and feel safe
Yes.
and want to go to a party.
May I ask when this happened? How long ago was this?
The boy is now maybe 12,
Okay.
maybe 10.
Yeah. And his mother didn't think he was going to be able to swim?
It wasn't anything she'd ever thought about, or
Yeah.
she couldn't swim.
Right.
So she took him
Also
to
one.
mother-child classes, and you know, she passed on to him all of her fears.
Right.
To some, it is a luxury. I mean,
Yes.
I grew up, like, definitely, I didn't know, like, growing up, I was the youngest of 5, and I didn't know that we were as poor as we were. My father worked 2 jobs, we all went to private school. I had no clue till I was older, just what my parents did for us.
Yeah.
And we went camping, that was our vacation. I didn't know what Disney World was, I didn't know what a water park was, we camped in a
goodness.
tent. Okay, my father's hunting tent. We can't believe he dragged my mother in the woods, but she went. So I mean, we learned, like, we did that. So this was, we camped at lakes. So I've always been in the water, still don't know how to swim or freestyle. I don't know how to, like, formally swim, but I've been in the water
It's
forever.
very important.
But the thing is, it is a luxury, and pools, private pools are a luxury, and it isn't. It really isn't out there for a lot of people, a very high percentage of people, no matter what their background, and that's why programs like this
Yes.
are
So I
like
support it,
exceptional for this.
especially
to getting-
for,
yeah,
trying to.
100%.
We need to find a way for the kids of Thai,
Mhm.
because they never get in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way.
And it's right here. I
There's
mean,
no way to get in the water for them,
Yeah.
and so that is something that I
I'm
would.
from
And that's exactly the same problem they had in Charleston. Is you've got all this water all over the place.
surrounded
And
by.
there's so many kids who can't afford to learn to swim.
Yeah.
So they started this Low Country Splash, and then they created another one called the Upcountry Splash, which takes place up in Greenville, South Carolina area. So now they've got 2 swims every year
Yeah.
that are, they're 2.4-mile swims, It's not a race. You get a time, but it's not a race. It's just a fundraiser. The one in Charleston is actually kind of fun. It's a 2.4-mile swim, which is like the Ironman triathlon swim distance. But what they do is they start the swim at the slack tide, about half an hour after slack tide. As the tide starts going out. So you swim 2.4 miles in about an hour, which is really fast. So it's really fun. But it's one of those, when you get to the finish, you got to grab the dock and hang on, because you can be 100 yards past the finish in no time. Or you'll swim. I did a 6-mile. They have a 6-mile version of that as well that I did a couple of years ago. And it was really neat because you sight on a buoy. They have these big buoys that are about 6 feet tall, and you sight on this buoy that's like a half mile away, and 10 minutes later you're there. And you're like, how'd that happen? You're just swimming along with the moving water. It's really fun. But, thank you all for coming. Don't be afraid to try something you've never done before.
Absolutely.
This has been, every swim I've done, I've learned something that I can take on to the next swim. And it's been a real good, it's good for my psychology. Good time to be in my head, and it's good physically.
And
as
swim
well.
at night, that's my other thing.
Yes.
So I swim most nights. I go out and just hang out and go
Yeah.
out for 10 or 15 minutes.
It's delightful.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
utterly fantastic at night.
Yeah.
Night's the best.
Yeah, and I have people who say, aren't you worried about the creatures in the lake? I've
Yes.
never seen a thing.
I don't know, the sun is biting me.
Well, if you keep swimming, if you're moving, they're not so bad. If you're stationary.
You should do motivation. That's what you should do.
Yeah.
No, because it's not like you didn't reach your goal, but you're happy, and that's what's important.
Yeah, one of the other things I wanted to do on this swim is I wanted to swim through the Eye of the Needle. Nobody had ever done it.
Yes.
The Eye of the Needle is one of those places that was just always magical to me because Skipper Mac took us there in the Silver Spray, and he loved going through the Eye of the Needle. And they don't do it anymore because
Is it Harbor Islands?
yeah. So I wanted to swim through there. And when it came time to make that choice on Wednesday morning, I decided not to. Because at that point, I was like, I want the shortest distance between 2 points. So I didn't end up doing that. So people that were influential in my life here at Silver Bay were all the old Silver Bayers. Bill Baker, Charlie Lupton, who Bay Beach is dedicated to now, taught me to snorkel when I was probably 8. And there's a picture of me with a mask on, a snorkel down at Slim Point when Charlie Lupton taught me to snorkel. I was the only one who showed up for snorkeling class, and he taught me. And he was an avid swimmer as well. I mean, he used to swim, a good bit of open water swimming. But yeah, you look back at all those leaders that were around when you were kids who are gone now. But
so I remember, a lot over the years, someone would not swim the length of the lake because, but they would cross the lake, and then people would get up in the air, and very exciting. And so, for the last 28 years, I thought, next year I'm going to swim across the lake, which I have yet to do. But I don't know if it would be like a fun, like there could be like a clinic and maybe everybody who did it, like a little fundraiser or something, because I don't see people doing it as
They don't.
much
I don't think they do it
anymore.
anymore.
I did it. So my goal was to swim across, ice skate, hike across, boat across, kayak across, every way I could think.
Cross-country ski across.
Cross-country
There you
ski across. Oh yes, I've done all of those.
But I don't think they do it.
I know,
You don't hear about it
anymore.
It's wonderful.
it is.
It's magical to
Go
be out
early in the
in the
morning
middle.
before it gets windy.
And the whole lake, you're only seeing it from this far above.
Yes.
And you're this teeny little bump in the lake. There's just this teeny little bump of you showing.
Yeah. And,
Thank you.
My favorite.
Very inspiring.
well, thank you all for
Oh
coming.
my God, thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
So I see.
Seriously?